So what do you expect from your pastor? What do you expect from me? I think it's a funny question because if I'm honest, as a pastor, I feel other people's expectations. I was at a hockey tournament recently when some folks at my table were kind of talking and gossiping about something, and I wasn't even really paying attention. But then one dad said, "Oh, I can't go there because Angie's at the table." Like somehow I'm not just like a hockey mom at the hockey tournament in that day. When I was in seminary, we had all these big interviews that we had to take and do in order to become a pastor. And I always felt like I kind of understood what was going to be expected of me as a pastor and what that pastoral role God was inviting me into. But the things I got dinged on in those interviews was my thoughts on what they called pastoral authority. You see, this is where we find Paul in this chapter of 1 Corinthians. Paul is addressing his own authority and the church's leadership authority in the 9th chapter of 1 Corinthians. Paul is saying that he is simultaneously entirely free. He can do whatever he wants, but also at the same time completely a slave to the work that he is doing, a slave to his neighbors in the church. Now, 15th century theologian Martin Luther put it like this in his essay, Freedom of a Christian. Martin Luther says, "A Christian is a perfectly free Lord of all, subject to none." And then at the same time, he offers a paradox, and he says, "A Christian is a perfectly dutiful servant of all, subject to all." You see, both Paul and Martin Luther assert that through Christ's work on the cross, we are entirely free. Meaning that we're subject to no one's expectations except for God. And God accepts us and loves us exactly how we are. But at the same time, meaning that we are freed, we get the chance to go free other people by telling them about Christ's work on the cross. At the same time, we don't take that freedom lightly. Instead, we use our freedom for each other. We do our freedom for the good of each other. We're subject to all. We're subject to all of them, to carry their struggles, their burdens, to share in mutuality, to ensure that every person is seen, known, and loved. At the same time, we're free and a servant. As a person, I'm free to do whatever I want. God's going to love me and God's going to be with me no matter what. But as a pastor, I know it's not really just good for me. It's not good for my kids for me to do whatever I want. It's not good for my community or other people around me. I think that this is that's true for you. You see, in God's economy, we don't actually have anything to offer. God doesn't need your $20 or for you to keep your promise to not go looking for bad things on the internet tonight. The truth is, though, your neighbor does. Your neighbor does need those things. Your community does. Your partner does. But God doesn't. I love how Pastor Danielle Strickland put it when she said, humility is about when you and God agree about who you are. So what's a Christian to do? What is a Christian's authority? Paul is encouraging us to be free in our calling, but humble to our neighbor, to be free to what God has invited us to take off the robe of slavery, but to also be a slave to our neighbor. So here's my question for you today. How have you experienced freedom for your life? And number 2, how can you serve someone else today? How can you go and look out for their best good? Thanks for joining us.